guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I have a little bit of a different video for ya. I'm gonna be working on a little sketchbook piece, just something fun for you guys to watch. And during the piece, I'm actually gonna be talking about my top 10 tips for aspiring artists. So this is great for anyone that's just made a New Year's resolution to learn how to make art and all of that good stuff. So hopefully this helps you, hopefully it helps you learn something or inspires you. And yeah, so I'm gonna start with number 1. So my first tip for aspiring artists is to learn the fundamentals. And I cannot stress how important I feel this is. Things like anatomy, perspective, and the principles and elements of art, which includes things like composition, balance, rhythm, and a load of other things. They're all really, really important to learn. And the reason that I believe this is because I think it's extremely important to learn the rules before you break them. I think that as an artist, you should be making intentional decisions. And if you don't know what the rules are, then you can't make an intentional decision to either adhere to that rule or to break that rule. And if you're doing something unintentionally, it's usually going to look sloppy. For example, anatomy is a huge one. I hear a lot of people say, oh, I don't have bad anatomy, it's just my style. But unless it's an intentional decision, it's not your style, and you can usually tell when someone has bad anatomy versus it's just their style. For example, I don't have the best anatomy, and I know that, and I don't use my style as an excuse for that. I just know that my anatomy isn't as perfect as it could be. So I'm still trying to learn the fundamentals of anatomy. It's okay to do cartoons and have fun at the same time. I don't think that you should restrict yourself to just drawing realistically until you have it perfect. But just never stop working on your fundamentals and make sure that they're always in the back of your mind and you're always learning more about them. There's loads of great resources out there for learning fundamentals. Some of the books that I personally have are How to Draw the Human Figure, A Complete Guide, which is by Raynes Jody Raynes. I have Anatomy for Artists, A Complete Guide to Drawing the Human Body by Barrington Barber. And I have Classic Human Anatomy, The Artist's Guide to Form, Function, and Movement by Valerie L. Winslow. I also have the Perspective Drawing Handbook by Joseph D'Amelio. So these are just the books that I have. There's loads of amazing books out there, pretty much every book Andrew Loomis has ever written. Google is a great place for resources and book recommendations. If you just Google books that every artist must read, or for example, there's loads of great recommendations out there that you can really tailor to what you're interested in. Also, YouTube is a really good resource if you're on a budget. There's loads of great videos out there by amazing, talented artists teaching you things like classical anatomy or perspective. Also, if you can afford to, take classes, especially figure drawing classes, because, and this leads to my second top tip for aspiring artists, which is draw from life. Like I said, it's totally okay to cartoon, but if you know how to draw something correctly, you can abstract it way more easily and in a much more convincing way. And the best way to do this is to draw from life, not from photographs, if at all possible. In life, you kind of see how three-dimensional an object is, and it's not flattened out like a photograph. It makes it harder to translate it from 3D to 2D, but every time you do that, you learn so much more than drawing from a photo. Now, of course, there's going to be times that you can't always get a realistic, you can't always get a nude model in your studio. So it's perfectly okay to draw from photos, but whenever possible, I would recommend drawing from life. My third tip is to practice. You don't get better without any practice. Just fill up sketchbooks with drawings of eyes, drawings of feet, drawings of hands. You should always have a sketchbook with you, even if it's just a really little one, and you should try to draw constantly, even if it's not perfect. Now, I admit I'm not the best at this tip, but it is extremely important, and you'll notice that if you practice in a dedicated way, you will improve so much faster than if you're not sketching constantly. My fourth tip for aspiring artists is to accept imperfection. It's okay to not be perfect. Nothing you draw is going to be perfect, and the sooner that you can accept that you will draw bad things and be okay with that, then the more you'll draw and the better you'll get. Because if you're afraid of making mistakes, or if you're afraid of not drawing something perfectly, more than likely you're just not going to draw it, or that fear is going to make it come out bad to begin with. So if you just accept that sometimes your work's going to look really crappy and move on past that, you're not going to be afraid to make art, if that makes sense. Like, if it sucks, so what? Just draw it again. If you try not to get too attached to your work and keep the creativity flowing, and don't stifle it with trying to be a perfectionist, you'll be a lot better off. And like I said, same with practicing, you'll learn a lot faster. My fifth tip is to experiment with different mediums. I recommend using cheap versions first. Artist Loft from Michaels is a really great brand. I think most of their stuff's about $3.99. Great, I mean in terms of cheapness. But experiment with all different mediums because a lot of times something may not work for you, but something else will. So some people are really, really bad at pastel, but are really good at painting. Other people can't figure out how to hold a brush, but they're amazing with graphite. And a lot of times a certain technique or a certain material will really click with you when something hadn't been clicking with you before. And so, especially if you're getting frustrated with your medium, try something else. If you try everything, find out what medium brings you the most joy, even if you're not great at it right away, you'll get much more of a broader experience in artwork. My sixth tip is to not worry about your style. So don't stress when you're starting out about finding what your style is. You should focus on the basics. Like I said, it's okay to abstract, but your style is gonna evolve naturally. And it's okay to try different styles and be inspired by different artists and just experiment with that. If you really like the way one artist draws faces, then do some studies of the way they draw faces. I'm not saying copy people and you should always credit, but when you're a learning artist, it's okay to try different styles, and eventually what's gonna happen is the things that really click with you will get incorporated into your style and it will all come naturally to you. You're still learning, so the more that you learn, the more that your style will become fine-tuned. But it's important to remember that your style is probably never going to stop changing and evolving, so don't really stress about trying to pin it down, just enjoy the process of learning things. Speaking of learning things, my seventh tip is to learn from other artists. You should take your sketching kit and go to a museum and paint studies from the masters. Look at the way they applied their paint or how they painted lights. Watch YouTube videos and hang out with other artist friends. Do drink and draws if your city does any of those. A lot of times there's groups in cities, like art groups, that will organize hanging out. They'll go draw and drink some coffee or drink some beer. Those are great places to go. Collaborate with your friends, draw on each other's work. I always feel like the most amazing ideas are born when you're feeding off of each other and inspiring each other. So don't be a shut-in and learn about the world that you're entering. Number 8 is be open to criticism. And I know this is hard because when you make something, it's your baby. You don't want anyone to say anything bad about it, but it's actually really important to listen to what people say. Don't put a wall up and refuse to listen to criticism. Now, it's okay to turn criticism down, but you have to remember that "it's my style" is never a good excuse for anatomy that doesn't make any sense. And a lot of times people will have a point when they're talking to you. What you need to learn as an artist is how to discern what is important criticism and what is not important criticism. Listen to it and then think, do I want to make this change? And then make a conscious decision. But always listen to it because you'll only get better through critically evaluating your own artwork. Number 9 is accept that art is hard work. Now, this is for those of you that are planning on making a career out of art. You need to accept that being an artist is an unstable career that requires a huge amount of dedication and hard work. It is not easy. Not everyone is cut out for it, and if you choose to pursue it as a career, then you need to make a stable plan, expect to work multiple jobs at a time for a huge portion of your career to make ends meet, and really pursue it with ferocity. Expect that finding success is hard but possible, but only if you don't give up. Now, if you don't feel like this is the path for you, that's okay too. Art doesn't have to be your career. Even if you love art, art can be really stressful to have as a career, and it's okay to keep it as a hobby. Sometimes your job is what you do to support what you truly love, and that's okay. Number 10, and my last tip, and probably the most important tip, is never give up. The only way that you can fail is by giving up. And if you refuse to give up, you're always going to be moving forward, even if it's like at a snail's pace. So just enjoy art for itself. Don't let yourself get bogged down with insecurities or perfectionism, and just focus on the act of creating. Just don't stop creating and you're going to do great. So I hope you guys enjoyed my top 10 tips for aspiring artists. Let me know if it helped you. What are your top tips for aspiring or emerging artists? And yeah, thanks so much for watching and have a great rest of your day. Bye guys! Oh my God! Do you want to build a snowman? It doesn't have to be a